if you stood down and said it's about that big, stand it up on end, that's about much higher, how much higher the top of the landfill would be than it is now.
Will that be the highest in Michigan, he asked?
No, not from the base of the landfill to the top. There are various ways to measure above mean sea level or from the surrounding area. It wouldn't be the highest given the surrounding area. There's some other landfills in Michigan that would be larger than this. But this landfill currently sits up on a hill. So, above mean sea level, I'm not sure what it might be the highest, I don't know. Although there's some landfills up north that are up higher because the whole topography of the whole area is higher. So we're measuring from the surrounding area, like from Napier Road going up 400 feet. Carleton Farms landfill down in southern Wayne County would be taller than this when it's full.
So did you want to ask a question, sir? Okay, he's got a question here. Sorry, he's been being very patient.
Carl Peters from Northfield Township. This is from the landfill, but has any emissions been done on the energy plant? They are contributing also when they burn the same gases that the landfill is doing.
So Missy, do you want to talk to that a minute?
Yes, that facility, the gas to energy plant, has been evaluated. They have 4 turbines there, so those emissions have been evaluated and they're permitted. Remember that the flares in the turbines don't necessarily run at the same time. I mean, there's only so much gas, and they want to burn as much gas as they can in the gas to energy plant to make the electricity. So when you look at the emissions that we had up here, just remember that you're not getting the maximum emissions out of the flares and the maximum emissions out of the gas to energy plant, the turbines, because it's usually one or the other, or they operate, a little bit of the flares and a lot of the turbines. It's just, they can go up and down with both sides, but there's only so much gas. So.
Okay, we got a question over here.
Robert Horton from Salem Township. Wouldn't raising the new flare up 107 feet put that above? Actually, the people on this side of it are kind of downhill, and the prevailing the prevailing wind, wouldn't that dilute the air and pollute it quite a bit?
Well, usually, the further you put it up, it does help with dilution. So that could be one possible reason for the height.
It's also half a mile south of the temporary one too.
Yes, it'll be on the south side of the landfill where the other 2 enclosed flares are.
And actually, the wind will follow the railroad tracks sort of most of the time.
Okay, I'm not very familiar with I guess the modeling that actually is done, and I review other parts of the permit, but we have people that specially review the modeling of that.
The prevailing wind would carry emissions to the north and east from that area over toward the Northville Ridge and maybe some Steeplechase, and following the railroad track too, depending on which direction the wind is going. But basically, the emissions will follow the prevailing winds from southwest to northeast.
Stand up.
It would disperse throughout the air.
Hold on 1 second. I do have a question over here.
I'm Bob Nix, Northfield Township Supervisor. I want to thank Scott and your whole group for coming and spending the time to disseminate the information and all the work that you've done. But I'd like to kind of recap with just some common sense kind of questions, because we've gone back and forth with a lot of technical stuff. And I think what I'd like to try to do is just ask a couple of questions, and you guys can help with the answers, and then I think everybody might have a little more flavor for where we are. Comment number 1 is, as we speak today, there's not enough flare capacity at Arbor Hills to cover the emissions that are coming out. True or false? True, right? So we need more capacity in order, and you've got the chart that's right up there. So what you've done is you have projected, and this is the other thing I want to clarify for everyone, is that The reason for this application is that we need more capacity. That's the common sense piece, because we know there's not enough capacity now. What the questions have been asked, that people have been asking is, okay, the capacity that this flare will take capacity up to what level? In other words, and I think Scott said, basically, we're gonna put in a flare that'll have sufficient capacity for the landfill at its full capacity. Hence, theoretically, we shouldn't need any more flares. This should be the flare that should be sufficient to cover the ongoing needs for this landfill. Is that correct? Correct, everybody's nodding their head. Okay, so when this flare goes in, it's gonna have, in a sense, the day that it's installed, it's gonna have it's got excess capacity. It should be able to cover everything that's here in 2007, 2018, and then as we go forward. So the follow-up question, I think everybody's thinking about, which is, okay, periodically, is MDEQ going to have any kind of monitoring of that flare or some monitoring of this facility to see if it's actually working? In other words, is it picking up all of this extra gas? And I think the answer to that is you will. Right. So periodically we'll get a test. In other words, we'll figure out whether or not it works. So once it's installed, I know on behalf of the township, I'm going to be asking you to go out and do that and to check and make sure that we now are getting the benefit of this catching that gas. The other questions, there's been a whole bunch of questions about the toxins and what it burns off and whatever else happens out there. And then I guess my follow-up question would be, once everything's functioning out there and so forth, is there a test of the emissions of the flare itself? So that something in 2018 here to start with, once it's installed, you go out there and check it and say, hey, it's okay. It's emitting A, B, C, D, and whatever the quantities are. And if you could do that, then that would give, I think, most of the residents two benchmarks. One, we're collecting, it's working and we're getting the gas. And number two, we've now tested the emissions from it and we're not creating a health hazard. So you're nodding your head. Are those two things that I think you can do?
Yeah, that's correct. That's what's in the current permit. Stack testing of the flares.
So let me just say this on behalf of the township, because I'm kind of the guy that's been carrying a lot of the weight here with you guys. I mean, the reality here is there's going to be some follow-up, and we're going to be working with you as we go through this process to make sure that what happens works. And if it doesn't, then we're going to be back to the drawing board. If it doesn't prove to work, then there's going to have to be another flare or another something or another something. And until that happens, I mean, we have to go through this process to do it, and then I'm going to be working with you to see if it works. So hopefully that gives everybody some idea that this is not a static process. This is something we're going to go through, and you'll do some of this testing for us, so we can then disseminate to our residents the results.
Bob,
Thanks a lot, Scott.
We get the results pretty regularly from the landfill today.
No, we will, but I'm talking about as a result of these efforts, the testing of the actual capacity of the flare and how it works, and then also these emissions, and I think those will be real helpful for us. Thank you.
Scott, did you want to say anything else about the follow-up that it will be doing on the landfill as far as inspections
Right.
and continuing odor surveys and
Yep, so we'll
stack
continue to
testing
do,
and all of that?
this is not end solution. We're going to continue to inspect this facility. We're going to continue to respond to complaints as they come in. So we'll continue with our odor observations. The permit that's proposed here has stack testing in it to determine that they're actually in compliance with the permit limits. Am I missing anything?
No, I think you're good. We have a few more minutes, so we have another question right here, and then we may have time for one more, and then we're going to have to switch over to the hearing. So
Okay.
just to let everybody know, we're still available to answer questions. We just won't be answering them in here. If you have questions that you want answered, you're going to want to go to the cafeteria once the hearing starts, because remember, the hearing, we're just taking your comments on the proposed permit, and we won't be responding to you. So let me get this gentleman's question here.
The composting operation north of 6 Mile, there's no collection, gas collection off of that, is there?
No, there's not.
And what's the contribution of the composting to odors and emissions in the overall scheme of
So
things?
composting does have an odor to it, for sure. We are looking at that, and part of the company's response to our violation letter is that they're conducting an audit of their composting operation by a professional service that evaluates composting operations. So we're looking at that.
How large is that contribution? Does your study show
How much contribution is the compost to the odors that are being observed? Yeah, rough guess, I think Suresh would probably, you'd want to talk to RK. I think he's got an analysis of all that. It's probably about 25% would be my guess.
Okay, we have time for one more question. I saw yours. Okay, let me just skip this one, and then thank you for letting me scoot by.
Good evening, thank you. Bruce Leonard, Northville Township, 7 mile and acre just north of the landfill. So we've talked a lot about the capacity of the piping and the gas collection system. I don't know if have the pipes gone in under the railroad yet? So there's gonna be 2 3-foot pipes? Or is it just one?
There's one additional 36 diameter pipe that's going on under the tracks.
So we talk about the capacity, and that will handle the capacity when the landfill's at its maximum, right? And Larry, you said 9 or 12 years.
Right. Part of the issue is that there's a drop in vacuum currently under the tracks, and so they're attempting to address that drop. They don't want that drop to be so dramatic. They want that to be less, and so they're installing additional capacity under the tracks.
So I hear a lot that the sizing of the piping is key to gas collection. Are we going to be oversized for the next 9 years, 10 years, 11 years until the landfill's at its capacity? And it won't function properly?
No, I don't think that's the case, no.
Okay.
Okay, well, we're pretty much at 7 right now, so we're going to take a couple of minutes to bring our decision maker and our hearings officer up to the front. So if you do have a comment that you would like to make, we're going to call your name and have you come up to the microphone right here to make your comment. We'll go over a little bit more instructions in a few minutes, but just so that you know, we do have those resources available for you in the cafeteria. If you have other questions, RK and Associates is out there as well as staff members. So if you make your comment and you still have more questions, please feel free to utilize that opportunity.
You don't?
No.